As a child, were you told to not talk about politics and religion in polite company? How about science and religion? That too is a topic full of landmines that can damage your image in the face of people who disagree with you. You know, it's funny. We can disagree on which is better, chocolate or vanilla ice cream, but topics involving politics, science, and religion are closely connected to our self-image and even our perception of the means of survival. We take them much more seriously than the taste of ice cream. Here on The Vantage Point, we're embarking on a three-part series that is focused on science and religion with implications on politics. We aren't going to talk about the deeper meaning of the Force in Star Wars. Nope. In our series, we're going to show that climate change is evident in the Bible, which some well-meaning people deny. We're also going to show that periods of climate change in the Bible can be used to advance an argument for an older authorship for most of the books of the Old Testament. At the end of the series, you'll be better equipped to engage people in debates over the age of the Bible, as well as the veracity and nature of climate change. While Abrahamic religions ushered in an era in which believers discarded nature gods in favor of a personal deity who transcended all realms of life, control of natural forces was nevertheless retained by the God of Abraham. The authors of the texts associated with Judaism and Christianity, which were written over a period of time that spanned 600 to 1800 years, depending on whose point of view one takes, show that ancient people had a solid appreciation or reverential fear for the forces of nature. While Noah's great flood event has made it into popular culture, the presence of dew, frost, snow, tornadoes, and frozen conditions in Scripture offer us glimpses of past climates. Imagery in biblical narratives, therefore, provides tantalizing glimpses into the weather and climatic conditions at the time each respective author penned his book. Those distinct climate epochs align with the book of Job, the Pentateuch, most of the history books, and the New Testament. To appreciate how weather events in the Bible are reflective of regional climate, keep in mind that most of the Old Testament authors were not well traveled. Consequently, their environmental perceptions and geographic knowledge, or geosophy, were limited to conditions with which they were familiar through personal experience or from others who had talked to them about other places. The evidence presented ahead suggests that some books of the Old Testament were written early in the time periods that are debated by biblical scholars. And while we're on that topic, let's talk about how we date the Bible. Dating books in the Bible has heretofore been based on references to cultural items like bronze and iron, historical events that could be dated, and which documented kingdom or ruler was mentioned in the present or past tense. Among religionists who study the dates of the books of the Bible, there are two major schools of thought about when the texts were penned. Happily, there's agreement on the chronology of the order of books. Because there are no references to Mosaic law or the Exodus, for instance, Bible scholars generally agree that the book of Job is the oldest biblical text. Some books were written during or just after the Babylonian exile, so their dates cannot be older than the 6th century BC. Dates for the New Testament range from mid-1st century through early 2nd century. Again, there appear to be two major camps in the literary world of biblical scholars: older text advocates and the latter or recent authorship proponents. As noted above and more fully explained later, weather and climate imagery in the books of the Bible suggest that the book of Job, the history books, and the Pentateuch favor older authorship. In the final analysis, the use of weather and climate to date Scripture seems to be lacking among biblical scholars. Because that is the case, it is little wonder why few people have ever looked at patterns of weather events as reflections of regional climate during the biblical age. The same is true for historical geographers. They haven't paid attention either. Let's take a look at how they could pay attention, though. Ethnomethodological and geotheological approaches to understanding religious thinking helps inform our understanding of landscapes and environmental conditions. Indeed, the existence of texts and archaeological evidence from ancient times has enabled some scholars to develop a subfield that considers the interfaces between the imagined worlds of religious leaders and the ways in which their adherents have perceived and discussed human environmental interactions, which is the essence of Harold Garfinkel's conception of ethnomethodology. A few geographers, such as myself, since J.K. Wright's seminal work on geotheology in the 1940s, use terms associated with his lexicon. Wright's geotheology, which ties together place and the worship of the divine, is similar to ethnomethodology, although understandably place is stressed more in geotheology. Still, few cultural geographers attempt to enter the minds of long-dead people whose actions were influenced by deeply held beliefs. Because the sacred texts of Judaism and Christianity were written over an approximately 1600 to 1800 year span of time, the way in which weather and climate are used by various authors tells us much about how they saw natural conditions in the Fertile Crescent. Biblical imagery provides the basis for reconstructing weather and climate conditions of the pre-Greek and pre-Roman eras, and even the Roman eras. Before presenting an analysis of scriptural passages, it's helpful to cast some light on the prevailing weather patterns that characterize eastern Mediterranean climate that is found throughout a large portion of the Levant. Remember, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. This will help ensure that more programs like this will be made and presented to you. Thank you.